What's up guys, Sam Rebels Off-Road will be installing the Badass belt and seeing if there's any increase or decrease in performance. So just like the last video where we did the Dyno Jet tune and we showed the performance upgrade, the 0 to 60 times, the quarter mile times, and the top speed, we're going to be installing it and then doing those times. We're also going to be doing a lot more videos like this. We're going to be doing the JBS clutch weights in probably the next video, as well as some exhaust upgrades as well.
Badass!
So you're going to want to stay tuned. You're going to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet, so you do not miss a single episode. And we're going to get started right now.
So the first thing you're going to want to do with this Badass belt is clean off the shipping oils. It actually has like a little slick coating on it from the factory. So you just want to get some really warm water and some dish soap. I'm going to use some Dawn dish detergent on my sponge, and we're just going to clean it off. Some people like to boil the water, but Dawn soap and a good scrubbing I think will do the trick. Go ahead and clean this off. You're gonna wanna rinse off all the soap, and then we're gonna let it air dry as we go ahead and get the clutch ready.
So another thing to note is this belt goes under a bunch of different names of branding. I think Trinity, EVP, Super ATV, all have a version of the Badass belt. And the main thing is they're all manufactured by G-Boost. So Badass, Extreme, and Badass are the same thing.
We're gonna go ahead and take off these clutch cover housing bolts, and there's a bunch of them all around this plastic clutch housing. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. That is a 10 millimeter, and so we're just gonna go ahead and get those off. Once you have all of these little bolts removed, you take off the cover and you're gonna slide it forward and work it around down through here. Now that we have the clutch exposed, we're going to take off this cage, and there's a 12 millimeter nut back there. There's a 12 millimeter nut back in there, and then there are two 10 millimeter bolts, one right there and then one back there. So we're going to go ahead and remove those and get that cage off. So next we're going to take this secondary and spread it apart and walk this belt off. And to do that, there are some threaded holes here, and they take a metric bolt. I got these spreader bolts from Full Axis UTV. They were pretty cheap, so I went ahead and bought them, and I keep them in my tool bag for cases like this. You don't really need all three, but it doesn't hurt. If you don't want to buy those spreader bolts, you can actually use the bolts from your engine mount, and you can just take that out, take one out and use that on here. In a pinch, that will work. I've used that before, but I do have these full access bolts, so might as well use them. I'm using a 17 millimeter socket. Go ahead and run them down, snug, and then start spreading the clutch. And once you have it spread, you can just take the clutch and walk it off like this. And there we go. Before you get it too far, you want to mark your belt if you're going to be using it as a spare. I'm going to use this one as a spare. I've been using it as a spare. So what I did was I took a little mark and I marked right there. You can see I put in, and I used a paint marker to do that. So you're going to want to do that if you ever find yourself where you're going to be reusing that belt. They are not directional to begin with, but once they start wearing in, they become directional. Now at this point, we want to clean out these sheaves and examine them, see if there's any grooving. You can run your fingernail along it and see if there's anything that catches on it, or if there's any real serious dips or anything like that. But then we're going to take some brake clean and a scouring pad, and we are going to clean these sheaves. You want to do this every so often anyways, but especially good to do when you're changing out belts so that it has a nice surface to wear into. You also want to every so often blow out your clutch. Fine particles of dust gets in here, wears it out even faster. More brake clean on either side. You can dose of it so it cleans it real good. We're gonna go around. And once you've cleaned out the primary, do the same thing for the secondary.
A few moments later.
So we have our air dried badass belt here.
So a lot of people upgrade to this badass belt for the reason that the OEM belt is a harder compound and it allegedly puts more wear on the sheaves. And so if you do a lot of riding at a singular speed, that belt will ride on the sheave in that location and it will wear it down. And so this badass belt is supposed to be a softer compound, and so it'll put less wear on those sheaves. Now in this video, we aren't going to be doing any testing to see if that is valid or not, but we will be seeing what the performance upgrade is.
Gonna go ahead and put it on. I like to put the words facing outwards so you can read them. That's just my way of verifying the way I put on. I do that with every belt. If it's an aftermarket, that's just the way I like to do it. I don't get confused. And then we're gonna walk it right on, just like we did the stock belt. And then we're going to remove the spreader bolts, turn this a few cycles, go ahead and put the cage back on, and then we will test it out. So one thing I wanted to note, that you might see that the clutch is still spread apart even when you remove the spreader bolts. So what you'll notice is once you start rotating it, it will go back and collapse eventually, and it'll ride right up to the top. And once it's rode all the way up to the top and you can see the belt, the top of the clutch sheave, that's when you know we are good to go. So for our best results, you want to break in the clutch, and so we're going to drive it around, varying the RPMs, which allows the belt to go all the way up on the sheaves, and we're going to do that in low gear because we don't want to have a ton of load on the belt. And what that'll do is just increase the flexibility of the belt and start to mate those sheaves, or rather the belt to those sheaves. That will help with keeping the belt lasting a long time and just general traction. So we're gonna go ahead and get all set up. I'm gonna throw the Draggy up on top, get connected to my phone, and we're gonna break in that belt.
A few moments later.
So we've broken the belt in. We're gonna go ahead and test out the badass belt with 35-inch tires and the DynoJet tune. So just like last time, we're going to be doing 3 runs. We will be taking the top from each of those runs and comparing it to the last one. So the last run was with the 35-inch tires and the DynoJet tune. So I'll have that tune uploaded. So now this is just with the badass belt added to that. All right, let's go. This is round 2 with the badass belt. So this is the 3rd and final run with the badass belt. That the engine actually bogs down with the badass belt at the beginning when you first take off. So I'm going to try to bring the throttle up a little bit more gradually at the very beginning until we get up to speed on this one. So let's see if that makes any difference. I'm not sure if it will. It might make a little difference though. So we're going to try it. This is run 4.
So that did seem to help slightly. So we're actually going to use that run, and so it'll be the best out of the 4 runs. It was very marginally better. Some of the numbers are better in that 4th run, and I think that might be because we more gradually went on the acceleration instead of just stabbing that go pedal. But anyways, now to the moment we're all waiting for, comparison of the data between our last run with the DynoJet tune to where we added this badass belt and got this data from. So we're gonna go ahead and get into our Excel spreadsheet where we have captured all this data. So we have all the data here once again, and the top speeds and the top times for each of the runs is captured here between all the mods. So here is the new data for the 35's DynoJet tune, badass belt, stock clutch, and stock exhaust. You can see all these times. We have all 4 runs here, and then we have the net gain and losses. So surprise, surprise, the 60 foot actually increased our time 0.2 seconds. Then the 1/8 of a mile increased our time 0.4 seconds and decreased our speed at that 1/8 of a mile by 0.85 miles per hour. Our 0 to 60 times increased our time by 0.97 seconds, and our 1,000 foot, it increased our time 0.48 seconds, and that was also a decrease in the speed by 0.57 miles per hour. On our quarter mile time, it increased it by 0.56 seconds, and it decreased our speed by 1.26 miles per hour at that quarter mile. And then it also decreased our top speed by 2 miles per hour. So this may come as a shock to you. I know it's really surprising to me, but the badass belt actually decreased performance across the board.
You are not a badass, pal.
It's surprising because of how popular this modification is. I don't believe that most people add this belt for performance reasons, but it actually decreased the performance more than the DynoJet tune added to it. So that's really surprising. It actually is slower than stock now that I've added the badass belt. Take it as you will. I'm not trying to down the badass belt. I think that there is potential that it has a lot more grip. I think that when it took off, it bogged down because it was gripping the clutch tighter perhaps, and that could be the reason why. It definitely does not slip as much as the stock belt. When you're going up hills and stuff like that, you don't get any of that squeaking or anything like that. So that, in my mind's a plus. However, do not get this badass belt if you're expecting huge performance gains or any performance gains at all. Expect a decrease in top speed in your 0 to 60 times, and really just across the board. Now, the next episode, we are going to be adding the JBS clutch weights, and hopefully that will bring back some of the performance that we lost from this badass belt.
Sounds badass.
And to secure your place as a complete badass, go ahead and smash that subscription, ring that bell so you don't miss any of our badass Rebels off-road content, and we think it'd be pretty badass of you. We'll see you next time.